Hello everyone and welcome back to Carried Away Travels. In this week's video, we're going to be talking about the most popular state park in all of New York and how you can maximize your visit there. If you have never heard of Watkins Glen State Park before, the first thing you need to know is that it packs a ton of beauty into a really small area. The main trail in the park is only 1.5 miles long, but it has 19 waterfalls. Like, it is literally a waterfall chaser's paradise, which is not what you might expect from such a small state park, but that is exactly why it is such a popular place to visit. Now, over Labor Day this year, we decided to do something a little bit different, and we planned our entire trip based off of video on social media. Now, some people may call that dumb. I'll leave that up to you. I will say we did end up having quite a different trip than we expected. And that is exactly why I wanted to do the video the way I am doing it today, because social media is not always what it seems. And you are always, almost always, going to get the best picture perfect sides of everything on social media, when in reality, it's going to be a little different. So, I will say, we had an amazing time. The park was absolutely stunning, but I really didn't know what we were getting into right at the beginning because I took Instagram and TikTok at its word, and it wasn't quite upfront with me. So in today's video, I want to help you set realistic expectations for your visit to Watkins Glen and tell you exactly how to plan to maximize your time there and get the most out of the incredible beauty that it has to offer. By the way, if this is your first time here, I'm Carrie, and I share helpful travel tips, itineraries, gear recommendations, and more so you can always have the perfect trip. Now, if this is the kind of content you've been looking for, make sure you hit that subscribe button right away so you don't forget, and you can get lots of helpful videos from me in the future. All right, so Watkins Glen State Park is located right in Watkins Glen, New York. And when I mean right in, I mean the entrance to this state park is literally in the middle of downtown. Like, you will be driving down the road past cute little shops and restaurants, and on your left, it says State Park entrance, and you can see the gorge beginning right there. It is really different. I haven't seen anything like that before, but it's very conveniently located, and the town of Watkins Glen is super cute. You should definitely check that out as well. Now, as I mentioned, this park is relatively small. There are only 3 trails in the park. The main one is the Gorge Trail, which is 1.5 miles long. It's got all those waterfalls. It is absolutely surreal. But there are also 2 additional trails, the northern and southern rim trails, that go along the top of the gorge. These are much less interesting, if we're being honest. When we went on the northern trail, it was pretty much deserted, and it was not hard to see why. No offense to the northern or southern rim trails, but there is a reason that everybody goes to the Gorge Trail, and that is where I would recommend that you focus your time. The Gorge Trail just has so much beauty. First of all, the gorge walls are made of some of the most interesting rock layers I have seen. They're thousands of super thin layers just stacked all on top of each other, and in some places they're covered in this bright green moss. It is absolutely beautiful. There's also a ton of lush foliage in here, just different flowers and trees. It is so beautiful. In places it almost looked kind of tropical just because it has so much of that vibrant green. It is very, very beautiful, and the whole thing runs right alongside this creek. And sometimes it's kind of peaceful and meandering, and then other times it turns into cascades or a rushing waterfall. So there's a lot of variety just in that aspect of it. Each of the waterfalls were also very different. There were some that had these really dramatic drops. There were some that came down with a stone bridge arching over them, and that looked absolutely picture perfect. There were others that were smaller, and they were more like kind of layered tumbling cascades. Like, there's just so much variety, and with 19 of them packed into 1.5 miles, like, There was literally a waterfall around almost every corner. I also have to mention that the pathway through the gorge literally looks like a trail out of a storybook. It's like a cobblestone, rocky path, and in a lot of places it has just like a little stone wall right along the edge of the river, and then it's just got, this dramatic cliffside right here. It looks so cute and peaceful. The only downside is it is incredibly narrow. So in most places, there's only enough room on this path for two people to walk side by side or pass each other, which, as you can imagine, on a crowded day means that you are literally bumping shoulders with someone at every step. So that would be my only complaint there. One other thing I would point out that's not really a complaint, just part of being around this many waterfalls, is that the stone does tend to get very wet. So it wasn't really muddy, which was nice. In a few places, there was some mud, but it can be very slippery just because there's mist coming off of these waterfalls. Sometimes there was a stream that shot down from the gorge and literally passed like this far from the trail, and that would splash and it would just cause the trail to be wet. So that is something else to keep in mind. It does add character to the adventure, but also a little bit of difficulty. With that said, I would definitely categorize this trail as moderately challenging. I think pretty much anyone could do this trail if they wanted to, as long as they took enough breaks and rest, but it is going to be much easier if you're in at least some sort of physical shape, because there are a decent number of stairs that you're going to be going up and down, and it is slippery. It doesn't sound long. Theoretically, you could do a 1.5-mile trail in like 30 minutes if you just went at a steady pace, but especially if it's crowded, which it really was on our day, that could be more like 2 hours. So you definitely want to make sure that you are up for the trip. However, there are enough little side areas where the trail widens just a bit, or you can kind of climb up to a rocky ledge and just relax for a few minutes if you need to. Now that you know a little bit more about Watkins Glen State Park and what you can expect from the Gorge Trail, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our experience there and specifically give some guidance on what to do and what not to do so you can get the most enjoyment possible out of your visit. First things first, choose the right entrance. So as I mentioned, there is one entrance that is right in downtown, but there is not a lot of parking there, and it's probably going to be pretty busy. There is also a southern entrance and an upper entrance. I did some research beforehand, and from what I could find, the upper entrance was the way to go. It takes just a couple extra minutes, but I literally mean a couple extra minutes. This park is so small, you can drive from one end to the other. So I would recommend going to the upper entrance. Parking on site is $10, which isn't bad. However, we accidentally found free parking right outside of the upper park entrance. There was a meadowish area, like small grassy area that looked like where you would park for like a fairground, and there are about a dozen other vehicles there, and we thought that was the parking, so we parked there with all these other people, and then we crossed the road and walked about 30 seconds and saw the park entrance and a line of cars waiting to come in from the other direction, all paying $10, and we didn't have to pay anything. So we did not get a ticket or anything. It did not appear to be a problem, but if you're uncomfortable with that, there was plenty of parking in the upper parking lot. Again, that is just $10. You can be there all day. Out of all of them, this seemed to be the largest parking lot, so that is the one I would recommend. Another reason to choose this lot in particular is because this starts your journey into the gorge going down the Jacob's Ladder, which is a series of 180 stairs. If you come from the other side of the gorge, you will end your trip by going up all of those stairs. So if you come in at the upper entrance, you kind of cut out that part right at the beginning, and it does make things a little bit easier. I also want to talk about what to wear. So I only found like one blog post that had any sort of recommendations on what to wear. So I went to social media, and of course, most of it is like girls in these cute outfits and their little tennis shoes and whatever. And so I really wasn't sure what to wear because I was getting mixed messages about the difficulty of this trail and the muddiness and everything between the blog, research, and social media. So I ended up wearing like moisture wicking biker shorts with a light cotton tank top and waterproof hiking shoes. I saw someone also recommend a rain jacket because there are places where the waterfall literally is right over the trail. And so you could get a little wet, but I didn't really feel like you needed it unless it was raining. After doing this whole trail, I would definitely say I am very happy that I went with moisture wicking clothes because one, I was getting a little sweaty. It was kind of toasty, and also I was getting wet from the cascades. So I was glad that I could dry quickly in between. So I would say any sort of like athletic wear outfit would be a good choice. But where I went wrong was the shoes. In the past, I've had a pair of waterproof hiking sandals, which are not fashionable, but they're absolutely great for hikes where you plan to trudge through a lot of water. But I wore out my last pair when we were in Ecuador, and I decided to replace them with more of a water resistant hiking shoe. And these are pretty breathable. Like they have a lot of mesh and air holes so that they can air out quickly, but they really didn't end up being a great choice for these trails because I kept worrying that I was going to step in a deeper puddle or walk under a waterfall and get my socks wet. Now, conversely, my husband wore like his normal water resistant hiking boots, and he might have been a little toasty, but he was much better off because he could just trudge through those puddles and the mud with no second thoughts, and he did just fine. We also went with a couple friends, and one of them was wearing the waterproof hiking sandals that I bought her, and I was jealous and regretted my decision. So, in retrospect, I would recommend a water resistant, waterproof hiking boot, like a duck boot, I think would be a very good choice here, or a waterproof hiking sandal. I would not recommend just like sandals or flip flops. You want something that's secure, something with a very good tread because it is so slippery here. Like, you don't want just like a smooth tread. I also would not recommend like a street sneaker or like your nice tennis shoes. I know Vans and things like that are very popular right now. I would not wear those here. Once again, you want good tread and also just expect that you're going to be getting your shoes wet and muddy. This is not the place you want to take your nice or cute tennis shoes. Now, let's talk about crowds a little bit. This was the number one thing that surprised me because I saw these videos, and you know, when you like one video on TikTok or Instagram, it starts showing you more. And so I saw all these videos of these really peaceful, empty trails and these gorgeous waterfalls, and that could not have been further from our experience. Yeah, I realized we went on a holiday weekend, which was probably the worst time to visit, but there's also only so much of an influx that there's going to be between a holiday weekend and a normal weekend. And it was so packed. I mentioned earlier that the trails were narrow, and it was just a steady stream of people going both directions, just jostling each other the whole time. My one friend said it felt like we were at an amusement park because there was just people everywhere. It was a never ending line of people. And that was very disappointing to me. It also meant that the 1.5-mile trail did, in fact, take us over 2 hours to get through because you're walking in a single file line. And then sometimes people would stop to take pictures, which is understandable. We did it too. But if you weren't considerate about it, um, you can literally hold up the entire line of people because they can't get around you. So, just common sense and common courtesy there seemed to be lacking a little bit. But that was really frustrating. I felt like my social battery was drained by the end of this, which is not usually a problem I have when I'm outside trying to get away from people. So that would be my biggest thing where social media, I feel like, led me astray. Again, obviously, people want to show the most beautiful sides to a place like this, but there's also a point where you need to make sure that people planning trips around what you're showing them have realistic expectations. But around 4:30 p.m., the park miraculously just cleared up. I think we showed up around 1:30, 2 o'clock, and as we headed back to our car, the Gorge Trail was pretty much empty. We took the upper northern rim trail back, and in a couple places it dips down into the gorge, and there was like no one there. And I did find another blog that said if you come in the late afternoon, there will hardly be anyone there. We unfortunately weren't able to plan around that, um, but it was very true. It just there are places where we had the whole trail to ourselves. And so if you can time that, do it. Just don't hesitate, go later in the day or very first thing in the morning. But I've also seen some reports that everyone tries to come first thing in the morning and then they just stay through late afternoon. So that would be my advice to you. Come around 4 o'clock or later and you'll skip most of the crowds. And to wrap things up, I just want to mention a few things that you'll want to bring with you. First, like I mentioned, waterproof shoes with very good tread, a rain jacket or light jacket if the weather calls for it, and water. Especially if it's crowded, you may be on that trail for 2 hours. You want water, you need to stay hydrated, especially on a trail that's kind of challenging like this. I would also recommend a snack. This is not one I expected to need a snack for, but I was so glad I had it. When everything was said and done. You just never know what's going to happen when your sugar or energy levels drop. You may need that pick me up. And last, make sure you have a good camera. You can bring your phone, but I got so many fun shots on my camera. We had a great time like playing around with the long exposures on the waterfalls. It is just so beautiful. And so make sure you have at least something to capture this beauty while you're out there. And if you're worried about it getting wet, which is a very real possibility, you may also want some sort of waterproof case for it just to make sure you don't have any water damage. Like I said, we had a very different trip than we anticipated, but I can truthfully say that we still had a wonderful time. We drove 9 hours each way to New York and back, but it was a lot of fun. We had a long holiday weekend. I had a wonderful time just exploring this whole Finger Lakes region. I've heard about it, I've never seen it. So Watkins Glen State Park was just one piece of this puzzle, but I would say it was very worth it. I would 100% go back and visit again, especially now that I've made my mistakes and I know what to change for next time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it was helpful for you as you plan your trip to Watkins Glen State Park, that you can avoid my mistakes and just have an absolutely perfect time while you're there. If you did enjoy this video, please drop a comment down below. Let me know what you liked. I use that feedback to help make more videos that you will find interesting and helpful. So don't be shy. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop those below as well, and I'll answer them as best as I can. As always, I also have a full written blog post on my website at www.cochranriding.com on the Carried Away Travels blog. I invite you to check that out. Once again, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to Carried Away Travels for more adventures like this in the future. Thank you so much for being here, and happy travels.